This room cost me $50,000. Not to live in, not to work in, to store things. Things I hadn't touched in years, boxes of clothes I was going to fit into someday, gadgets I used once, books I swore I would read. It was a museum of good intentions, and the price of admission was my peace of mind. Outwardly, I had it all. The good job, the nice car, the house full of stuff that proved I was successful. I was living the American dream, or so I was told, but in the quiet moments, late at night, the truth was suffocating. I wasn't successful. I was a servant to my possessions. The typical US household now carries a ton of debt, somewhere around $105,000 on average. We work jobs we dislike to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't even know. It's a message that's been sold to us for generations. More is better. Accumulation is achievement. But what if that's a lie? What if the dream isn't about owning everything, but about owning your life? This is the story of how I rejected the dream I was sold and built a new one. A dream not of accumulation, but of independence. A dream built not on a mountain of stuff, but on a foundation of freedom. This is how I traded my clutter for cash and discovered what the American dream should have been all along. It starts subtly. A bigger apartment, then a house. And you need to fill the space, right? The sofa, the dining set, the guest room furniture for guests who rarely visit. The garage fills up next. You've heard the joke, but it's true. A shocking number of people with 2-car garages can't park a single car in them. Mine was a graveyard for forgotten hobbies and bulk purchases. Then comes the off-site storage unit, a monthly fee to house the things that no longer fit in the house you bought to hold all your things. It's a bizarre cycle. Recent data shows that the number of households renting storage is climbing, with about 13.4% of US households now renting a unit. I was living in a state of perpetual overflow. My closets were packed, my drawers wouldn't close, and yet I kept shopping. Each purchase was a little dopamine hit, a temporary relief from the low-grade anxiety that hummed beneath the surface of my life. I didn't realize then that the clutter and the anxiety were connected. Research has found a link between cluttered homes and higher levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Some studies even suggest people with cluttered homes are more likely to feel depressed and fatigued. The clutter wasn't just a physical problem, it was a psychological one. My home, which was supposed to be my sanctuary, felt like a constant low-level emergency. It was a physical manifestation of my financial chaos. And the debt. Oh, the debt was the monster under the bed. The average American's credit card debt is somewhere in the ballpark of $6,500. Mine was higher. It was a silent weight, present in every decision. The vacation I couldn't really afford. The dinner out that went on the credit card. Every swipe was a promise to future me that he'd figure it out. But future me was just as stressed and overwhelmed as present me. The American dream I was chasing felt more like a hamster wheel. The pursuit of happiness had become the pursuit of stuff, and it was making me miserable. I was drowning, and the very things that were supposed to be symbols of my success were the weights pulling me under. I had built a life that looked good from the outside, but on the inside, I was trapped. The breaking point wasn't some big, dramatic event. It was a slow, dawning horror. It was the day I spent 20 minutes looking for a pair of scissors I knew I owned, only to give up and drive to the store to buy a new pair. It was the credit card statement that showed a balance that felt like a mountain and interest charges that were like throwing cash into a bonfire. It was realizing my time wasn't my own. I spent it working to pay for things, then cleaning, organizing, and managing those same things. Some organizing experts estimate that getting rid of clutter can eliminate 40% of housework in an average home. I was spending nearly half my cleaning time just managing junk. The final straw was a conversation about the future. A friend asked me what my 5-year plan was. I gave the standard answers, a promotion, maybe a bigger house. But the words felt hollow. What I really wanted was freedom. The freedom to travel, the freedom to work on projects I was passionate about, not just the ones that paid the most, the freedom to not feel a jolt of panic every time I checked my bank account. And I had none of it. I had a house full of things, but no freedom. That night, I looked around my house with new eyes. I didn't see success. I saw a cage. Every object had a hidden cost. Not just the purchase price, but the cost of storing it, cleaning it, insuring it, and the mental space it occupied. Every unnecessary purchase isn't just a money decision. It's a time, attention, and energy decision. I realized I had been trading my life force for inanimate objects. This was the core of financial minimalism, an idea I was just beginning to discover. It's not about deprivation, it's about intentionality. It's about shifting your mindset from being consumer-driven to value-driven and focusing on what brings real value to your life. It's about removing the clutter from your money decisions, not just from your home. And it holds the key to financial freedom. I decided right then that I was done. I was done being a consumer. I was going to become an owner, not of more things, but of my own life. And the first step was to dismantle the cage I had built for myself, one piece of clutter at a time. The journey from chaos to clarity wasn't an overnight transformation. It was a series of deliberate, conscious choices. It was about building new habits. These are the 10 habits that took me from drowning in debt and clutter to building real, lasting freedom. This was the most eye-opening and painful thing I did. For 1 month, I wrote down every single cent I spent. The morning coffee, the subscription I forgot I had, the impulse buy at the checkout counter. Everything. At the end of 30 days, I looked at the numbers, and I felt sick. It wasn't the big purchases that were killing me. It was the thousands of tiny, mindless transactions, the hundreds of dollars on takeout because I was too tired to cook, the subscriptions to services I never used. Tracking my spending was like turning on a bright light in a dusty, neglected room. For the first time, I saw where my money was actually going, and it had almost nothing to do with my values or my goals. It was the brutal, necessary truth I needed to see to start making real changes. Armed with my 30-day spending report, I went on a cancellation spree. That gym membership I hadn't used in 6 months. Gone. The 3 streaming services when I only really watch one. Cancelled. The monthly subscription box filled with stuff I didn't even want. Terminated. It was like giving myself an instant raise. This single act freed up hundreds of dollars a month. It's a form of financial decluttering that reduces both recurring financial drains and digital noise. It taught me that my financial life, like my home, had accumulated its own kind of clutter, obligations I had signed up for and then forgotten, quietly draining my resources month after month. To combat the impulse, buys that were sabotaging my budget, I implemented a simple but powerful rule. For any non-essential purchase over $50, I had to wait 24 hours before buying it. Sometimes I'd extend it to 48 hours or even a week for larger items. It's amazing how effective this is. That must-have gadget or trendy piece of clothing almost always loses its appeal after a day of reflection. The urgent, emotional desire to have it now fades, and the rational brain takes over, asking, do I really need this? Does this align with my goals? 90% of the time, the answer was no. This simple pause broke the cycle of instant gratification and replaced it with intentionality. One of the biggest challenges of decluttering is preventing the clutter from coming back. My solution was the one in, one out policy. If I bought a new shirt, an old one had to be donated or sold. If I bought a new book, one had to come off the shelf. This wasn't a punishment. It was a system for maintaining equilibrium. It forced me to confront the physical capacity of my home and made me a much more conscious shopper. Before buying something new, I had to ask myself, what am I willing to let go of to make room for this? Often the answer was nothing, and the new item stayed in the store. It stopped the accumulation in its tracks. The old me was constantly buying cheap, trendy things that would break or go out of style in a year. It was a disposable lifestyle. The new me shifted focus. The mantra of financial minimalism is quality over quantity. I started investing in high-quality items that were built to last, but only when they were truly necessary. A good pair of boots that could be resoled, a classic coat that would last a decade, durable kitchen tools that made cooking a pleasure. This approach is more expensive up front, but it is infinitely cheaper in the long run. It ends the constant cycle of replacement. It's about choosing better, not more. You stop seeing purchases as temporary fixes and start seeing them as long-term investments in your life. My 30-day spending audit revealed a shocking truth. I was spending a fortune on restaurants, takeout, and delivery. It was a combination of convenience and exhaustion. So I made a conscious effort to start cooking more. This wasn't about becoming a gourmet chef. It was about simple, healthy meals. I planned my meals for the week, which eliminated the what's for dinner stress and the last-minute decision to order a pizza. Not only did my grocery bill go down and my health improve, but I found a new sense of satisfaction in preparing my own food. It turned a major expense category into a source of savings and well-being. Before buying anything, especially single-use items, I started asking myself a series of questions. Can I borrow this from a friend or neighbor? Do I already own something that could do the job? Can I simply go without it? We live in a culture that tells us ownership is the only solution. But for a power tool you'll use once, a specialty cake pan for a single birthday, or a book you'll only read once, borrowing is a far better option. A growing number of libraries now have libraries of things, where you can borrow tools, kitchen equipment, and more. This habit rewired my brain to see solutions beyond just making a purchase. This was the habit that truly started building my freedom fund. I treated saving and investing like a bill. The day I got paid, a set amount of money was automatically transferred to my savings account and another portion to my investment accounts. Before I could even think about spending it, it was gone, working for my future. This is called paying yourself first, and it is the single most effective way to build wealth. It removes willpower and emotion from the equation. While the other habits were about spending less, this one was about actively building more. It turned the cash I was freeing up into a real growing asset that was creating the financial independence I craved. My financial life was as cluttered as my house. Multiple credit cards, old bank accounts, a confusing mess of bills. It created mental overhead and opportunities for things to fall through the cracks, like missed payments. So I simplified. I consolidated my bank accounts. I moved to a single primary credit card that I paid off in full each month. I set up auto-pay for all my recurring bills. This simplification did two things. It dramatically reduced the time and stress of managing my money, and it gave me a crystal-clear picture of my financial situation at a glance. A simple system is a system you can actually manage. This is the habit that started it all and tied everything together. I went through my home, room by room, and was ruthless. The question wasn't, could I use this someday? But am I using this now? Does this add real value to my life? If the answer was no, it had to go. I sold furniture, electronics, designer clothes, and collectibles on online marketplaces. The things that didn't sell were donated. It was a massive undertaking, but with every item that left my house, I felt lighter, and my bank account started to grow. The clutter I sold paid off a significant chunk of my credit card debt. That storage unit that was costing me money every month, I emptied it and sold the contents, turning a liability into a source of cash. It was the ultimate trade. My physical and mental burdens for cold, hard cash that I could use to buy my freedom. The process took almost a year. When it was over, my house felt different. It was calmer, more spacious. My bank account was also different. The credit card debt was gone. I had a fully funded emergency fund for the first time in my life, and I was investing a significant portion of my income every single month. The constant, low-level financial anxiety that had been my companion for years had vanished. But the biggest change wasn't the numbers in my account. It was the feeling of possibility. I had options. The American dream I was sold was a dream of accumulation, where your net worth was measured by the stuff you owned. It was a dream that, for many, leads to the nightmare of debt, stress, and feeling trapped. My new dream is one of independence. It's not about having more, it's about needing less. It's the freedom to know that if I lost my job, I'd be okay for a long, long time. It's the freedom to say no to a project that doesn't align with my values. It's the freedom to spend my time and money on experiences, not just things. This is the new American dream. It's not a bigger house. It's a paid-off house. It's not a new car. It's no car payment. It's not a closet full of designer clothes. It's a portfolio of investments that works for you while you sleep. It's a dream of stability, resilience, and choice. It's about recognizing that true wealth isn't what you can buy. It's the control you have over your own time and your own life. Less stuff truly is more freedom. This journey started with one small decision: to stop mindlessly consuming and start living intentionally. You can make that same decision. Start with one habit. Track your spending for just 1 week. Cancel one subscription you don't use. Put one item you haven't used in a year into a donation box. Small steps taken consistently lead to massive transformations. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. What is the one thing you could do today to trade a little bit of clutter for a little bit of freedom? And if you want to follow along as I continue to explore what it means to build a life of freedom over a life of stuff, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. There's so much more to this journey. I used to think that success was something you could display on a shelf. I learned that it's a feeling. It's the peace of mind that comes from living below your means. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you are prepared for the future. It's the joy of a home that serves you rather than you serving it. You hear this wild statistic that the average American home can have 300,000 items in it. I can tell you from experience, you don't need them. What you need is space. Space in your home, space in your budget, and space in your mind to build a life that you genuinely love. Don't just buy the dream. Build it.